honoured to say that I'm joined now from our studios in London by the leader of the great Osibisa, Teddy Osei. Teddy, how absolutely topplingly brilliant to see you, and thank you ever so much for coming into Arise News. And just listening to that song, Sunshine Day, I mean, it takes one back to the days when you were at the helm of the musical sort of world, coming out of Africa, crisscrossing the globe and making hits everywhere from the UK to America to India. I mean, what were you feeling when you heard that song just a minute ago?
Well, it always brings a lot of joy that we've been able to make such music, and it's been such going on over 50 years, and you know, I feel so proud.
Well, I can tell you this, Teddy, that the world is proud of you. I am proud of you. But let's start from the outset. I mean, the very beginning of your long musical journey, and indeed your life. I mean, long before the advent of Osibisa. You are from Kumasi in the Ashanti region of Ghana. Give us a bit of background there.
Oh, Kumasi. Well, as you might know or not, I went to St. Peter's School. It's a Catholic school, and I went to Roman Catholic school, so, and a church, a Catholic church. So my initial upbringing was more Christian. Right, and yeah, I followed that Christianity until I finished school. Then I went to something different.
You followed that Christianity, and then at the end of school you dropped out of Christianity, is that right? But let's move on. And it was while you were, Teddy, at that missionary school that you got into the talking drum, and I guess that signaled the beginning of your musical career.
Yeah. Yes, the talking drum, and I also tried the bamboo flute. You know, the African way of the bamboo flute, and you know, so I got interested in all this from my schoolmaster at that time when I was such a little man.
Course. And your first band, from what I understand, was a group called the Blue Jewels, which you and your chums formed in 1958. And but at the time, you were essentially a high life band, if I've got the facts correct. And then you metamorphosed into another band called the Comets.
Yes. Yeah, well, the Comets came at the time that I needed to bring the band out and play clubs and all that. So that was the Comets. The Comets was actually a band that started recording. We went to Accra, the capital, and recorded. So from then on, our first hit was well, I forgot at the moment, but it was really great to that time with the Comets.
And just to kind of refresh your memory
first
there,
song was
you
Pete,
travelled
Pete.
across West Africa
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
Comets, touring around places like Nigeria and so on. I mean, that must have been a hell of a time. But then in 1962, you left Ghana for London, and I understand that was a very difficult period for you. I mean, why did you decide to leave Ghana and move to London?
Well, as anybody who seems to be a little bit ambitious, I wanted to see what is on the side, on the side of the fence. So I just packed my bags and came to England. But my first look at the London scene was not comfortable at all. You know, so but I meant to stick in London and see what I might be able to find.
And of course, that sticking with London led to the formation of another group called Cat's Paw, which included Sola Mafio and your younger brother Mac Tonto, both of whom would become founding members of Osibisa. Is that right?
Yeah, right. Yes, Sola Mafio was a bit of a. He was in London before me. He was in London '61, and I came to London '62. But after 2 years, I managed to find him, and I managed to get him on board to form a high life band. And so we started with a high life band.
Dance the Body Music, and the leader of Osibisa, Teddy Osei, and founding member Wendell Richardson with me in our London studios. Wendell, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and of course Teddy, thank you for staying with us. And just before we speak to Wendell there, Teddy, I was talking to you about the origins of Osibisa, and having moved from Cat's Paw into Osibisa, changed your music to something more mixed from high life. There you were with Sola Mafio, Mac Tonto, and I understand the famous drummer Remy Kabaka, and then you brought in Spartacus, the West Indian, and eventually Wendell Richardson and Robert Bailey.
Yes. We were all living in North London, Finsbury Park. Wendell was living there as well. And we started rehearsing. Somehow Wendell dropped in and listened to the rehearsal and liked it. And he came back the next day. You know, at that time we were only 4. And Robert Bailey also came in and listened, and he liked what we were doing. So we could continue doing what we were doing, trying to find new bass line. Spartacus R, who was very exciting with his hairstyle. And it went on, and we got Lasisi Amao, Lofty Lasisi Amao, a Nigerian in as well. So it became a unique all-black band, first time in London.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely brilliant. But let me just bring in Wendell Richardson there. Wendell, I hope you can hear me, because I was a bit concerned initially that you were not able to sort of hear me, but I'm assured that you can. So just tell us what you remember of that first meeting with Osibisa.
I use the name Del Richardson now, and I can remember quite a few things about that meeting. It was in Finsbury Park, and we were jamming a couple of times, which was very interesting rhythms and interesting music. So I told Robert Bailey that I'm playing with this band that's very interesting. I think you should come along and check it out. And he did. And we find out we also could work together on arrangements and stuff, because we were working together for a long time before Osibisa, doing sessions and whatnot. And as it turned out, it was very nice to do the arrangements of some of the songs of Osibisa, and guitar parts and different sounding, different tones, you know, that sort of thing. Like Aquaba, Black Ant, and different songs we were doing at that time.
And I mean, Wendell, it was you who took Osibisa in a more sort of populist direction, where you to some extent rode the crest of the disco wave, and that sort of took you to the top of the charts in virtually every major country in the world. I'm kind of reminded of Genesis, one of my favorite prog rock bands, and what Phil Collins did with them, taking them from the margins into the mainstream of popular music. But you're credited with bringing the songs like Sunshine Day and Welcome Home, which were absolutely enormous global hits and still are to this day.
Well, to be honest, there was an area where Jerry Brown, the management, has suggested quite a few times that we need to lift up to a different program and do more vocal songs. And that's where we generated, I got to generate more hits from that attitude, that environment, that time. And I was working a lot with the idea of singing and playing the guitar and doing it well, because I figured out that I was already a very good guitar player, so I needed to really be a good singer. So that was something I had to work on.
Well, I mean, I have to say, Wendell, your voice is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, when I listen to some of those and watch some of those videos and listen to your song,
Thank you.
I mean, your voice, I mean, it was just absolutely electric. But of course, at the very heart of the music that was being played was the band, and that was a band that was presided over by Teddy Osei. And let me just bring Teddy in there. I think the amazing thing, Teddy, about Osibisa is that your music had something for everyone, which is why you were huge in Europe, you were huge in America, in Asia, even India at the time, which wasn't exposed to sort of Western or international music. But your performances were what really made you stand out. They were absolutely electric. I mean, what was it about your stage show that induced the sort of mass hysteria and incredible frenzy that came to be associated with Osibisa's performances?
Well, the thing is, at that time, rock musicians just comes on the stage and play, and with no additional energy, you know, to put into the music. We came on and brought a whole life sound, whole life ideas, whole life meaning to the stage music, and that's what got everybody, you know, very, very interesting, you know. So we take our heart to that. That was very prominent.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I saw you in later years. I mean, I saw you performing a number of times at the 100 Club in London and a few other places. And I just recall being completely blown away, because even though that was, you know, considerably later than when you first started playing, that electricity was still there. But let me bring Wendell Richardson in, because, of course, you were from the Caribbean. You are from the Caribbean. You're from Antigua. Lovely country, by the way. I've been there, Antigua and Barbuda. But I'm curious to know what it must have been like getting together with the Africans in a band and working in a creative capacity where there were fairly considerable cultural differences. I mean, were there cultural clashes between those of you from the Caribbean and the Africans?
No, I wouldn't say there were cultural clashes. No, I think, of course, there were some indifferences, but generally, the music of high life is not much different from calypso, really. But I didn't play calypso. Robert didn't play calypso. We were nourished in jazz. We liked jazz, soul, blues. I was doing a lot of blues at one point. So it was
Well, just to stay with us, we'll continue that discussion in a minute. You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead, including more music and chat from the two founding members of the hugely successful Afro-Rock band Osibisa. Stay with us. And with me in our London studios, the leader of Osibisa, Teddy Osei, and founding member of the band, Wendell Richardson. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for staying with us. And I was talking to you, Wendell, there just before we went on a break. You were talking about the fact that it wasn't that much of a challenge, in spite of public perception, that there were sort of cultural clashes between yourselves and the Africans.
You would like me to tell you something about that?
Yeah.
So that's the whole point of me asking
most
you
of
the
the
question.
time, for people in the Caribbean and people in Africa, it always get to the point where it gets into politics. And politics create a lot of problems between people, except the difference is, me being a musician, I speak the language of music, which is much simpler and much easier to express myself. And it's easier to talk to the world through music. I look at it from that point of view. And I try to live my life in that way, in that regards. So I don't really allow politics to disturb my methods of thinking, because I know it always is there and it always will be there. But music is love.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. But then you left the band, Osibisa, Wendell, a number of times and returned, the most recent being sort of a couple of years ago or so. I mean, what was behind that on-again, off-again, on-again relationship?
Things like I became more like Del Richardson instead of Wendell Richardson, which was too long. So I used my name as Del Richardson. And also I learned a tremendous lot about working in different genres of music and also developing my solo and my vocal cords to be able to play well and sing well together. That was the challenge.
Yes, of course, you joined groups like Free, which I suppose authenticated the fact that you were an accomplished musician and stage performer. But through it all, I think no one can deny that you were certainly one of the most notable electric guitarists and vocalists of that era. But let me bring Teddy Osei back in, because Teddy, beyond Wendell leaving and returning and leaving and returning, there were also, of course, a number of tragedies in Osibisa, including the deaths of people like Lofty Lasisi Mao, Kijayan, and more recently, Spartacus R. and your brother Mac Tonto.
It sure happens like that. People come in and sadly they leave us, and the story continues. But of course, all these famous guys have been there. They contributed to the success of the Osibisa sound. So we should all appreciate all of them, and we will always pray that their spirit is lifted high and high wherever they are.
Into that, and we certainly will keep them always in our prayers. But I mean, just talking more about one particular tragedy, Teddy, there was, of course, the enduring one of Kiki Jayan, who, after he left Osibisa in 1979, his life quite literally fell apart and he ended up begging on the streets.
Yeah, well, very unfortunate, but somehow he landed himself in some uncertain tragedy, you know, by taking some drugs, which we were trying to avoid him doing that. But then at that time he's become a grown man in sort of when he joined the band when he was 16, you know. So we tried to help him, but I think the drugs took a whole lot of him, and he couldn't come back.
Yeah, that is one very, very sad episode, because Kiki Giant was an absolutely brilliant musician, and we can hear him on that hit song of yours,
fantastic.
Sunshine Day. He's the one on the piano there.
Yeah.
But let me bring Wendell Richardson in. We're coming to the tail end of the interview now, Wendell, and after 50 years, lots of gold discs, hit after top chart hits, numerous awards in the UK, the US, and around the world. What would you say is Osibisa's biggest achievement?
I think playing the music, keep on playing the music, regardless to what has happened, and of course the experiences of losing some members of Osibisa, who was very close to all of us. We managed to move on, and quite frankly, we still managed to develop better music as we go along. However, Kiki Giant was really truly a giant and a beautiful player, and we went through different changes. Kofi Ivor left, and so it evolves into a different kind of sound with those instrumentalists and musicians like they have left. It's now into something else new. It's become a new thing. The new Osibisa has aspects of the old, but when it's revealed, I'm sure you will love it.
Well, I'm sure I will, but just a last word from Teddy Osei there. I suppose, Teddy, that in the final analysis, it all boiled down to a beat called Afro-Rock, which began with, as you put it, happy vibes and crisscross rhythms early one morning in the heart of Africa. And nobody else did it quite like Osibisa.
Yes, you are quite right. And Charles, I love you for it.
Teddy,
So,
I love you forever.
is,
And of course the same goes to Wendell. To both of you, thank you exceedingly for taking the time and honoring us on the Arise interview. Teddy Osei and Wendell Richardson, founding members of Osibisa. You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead, including we'll hear from the man who is organizing the 50th anniversary celebrations in London of the immortal Osibisa. Stay with us. Well, let's speak now with the international record producer and owner of the production company Red Steel Productions, Robert Corich, who's also, of course, the executive producer of the Osibisa 50th anniversary celebrations. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Robert. And first of all, just tell us how you first encountered Osibisa.
Oh, hello Charles, how are you? I first saw Osibisa when I was a teenage boy in New Zealand, and taken there by some friends, and we saw the band come onto the stage and were absolutely wiped out by how good they were, and it's been a love affair with the music ever since.
And well, I mean, I suppose I could say the same thing. I absolutely adore the band. I came across them, you know, through my eldest brother, who is a lawyer but also a pianist. But you were, of course, a very successful and accomplished producer in your own right, having worked with an assortment of top-notch bands, including Uriah Heep, Yes, Manfred Mann, Nazareth, etc., and of course Osibisa. And you've got some upcoming productions with Osibisa. You've been producing their albums. Just tell us a bit about that.
We've got 50th anniversary releases coming up. We've got some back catalogue which is going to go up onto the net shortly. We've got a new LP coming out which is made of sessions from various releases over the past 2 or 3 years. One of them was one that went into a movie, a Sunshine Day version for the Boyhood movie, which was done by Richard Linklater. And we have that LP coming out at the end of August, early September. We have a box set retrospective coming out near the end of the year. And we have a rarities album underway as well with some very, very interesting things on. And then we're also working on new material for a new album.
Well, that sounds jolly brilliant. And if people needed information about the 50th anniversary, where should they go to get it?
Oh, go to the Osibisa Band Facebook page or to the website, which is osibisa.co.uk. That'll be updated fairly regularly over the coming months, and tour information will be in there. The band's out gigging a lot now, and that will continue to be the case, you know, in Europe and further afield.
And I mean, what is it for people who admire Osibisa, long sort of term fans and so on? I mean, what can we expect as a fitting way to mark 50 years of the musical excellence of this incredible band?
Well, we've got the band, as I said, we've got the band going out playing most of the big hits, and we've got a few interesting things coming up which people haven't heard, some legacy tracks which have never been played live before, and we're also going to have a program of putting together recordings of the band playing the first, second, third album in their entirety, along with the hits. So we'll announce that at a later stage. So yeah, there's a lot of fun coming up.
Well, that sounds very interesting. And of course, just talking about you personally, Robert, I mean, apart from being a record producer who's worked with a lot of people, you've also written books on the likes of the Eagles, Led Zeppelin, The Who, AC/DC, ABBA, and Supertramp, to mention a few, as well as, of course, Osibisa.
Yeah, I better write one about Osibisa then.
Written one.
Yeah, no, it's fun to write about the music you love.
I picked you to that one, did I? Yeah, but okay, I don't suppose you heard me there, but let me ask you this, Robert. I mean, after 50 years and the kind of global success that we saw Osibisa achieve, is there anything that can follow the crisscross rhythms of Osibisa, that sort of genre?
Well, I don't know it's going to follow. I think we're going to continue to push the music out. I mean, there's still a lot of unreleased really good things which we're putting together at the moment, and of course the new album which we're working on, and we've got various guests that have agreed to come on to that. I can't say who those are at the moment, but there's some pretty interesting people. But you know, it'd be nice to get people along the likes of someone like Carlos Santana to come and do something with it as well, because he's influenced by the band hugely.
Well, actually, it's very interesting. I was just going to talk about Carlos Santana because I saw a piece that he did, a performance he did on, I think, on YouTube, and there he was playing Osibisa music. So that's a great tribute if I ever heard one. Robert, I want to thank you very much indeed for joining us. Robert Corich, who is the executive producer of the 50th anniversary celebrations of the immortal band Osibisa. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and London, bye-bye and thank you for watching.